Russo did not have a contract with the company, so he was free to go. When this happens, does Vince go into panic mode and start double-checking contracts for everybody of any sort of significance in the company?
Well, there were not any contracts. An employee doesn't have a contract. They're not a contracted person. So there had never been any reason to have a contract with anyone. You know, you're an employee. There wasn't anything done. So what Vince did was he went back in and did what a lot of big companies do with intellectual properties is they go in and they create non-compete clauses. Mm-hmm. So if someone leaves of their own volition, that they can't go work for a direct competitor for X amount of days.
Let me ask you this. When did the non-compete first become introduced into the company? Because it existed for performers prior to this. Who smartened Vince up to that, and when did he start to really make that kind of the new standard for the company? Do you remember?
Well, as far as employees, it started right here. As far as talent, I think he always had some kind of non-compete in the contracts. But for employees, he asked everyone to sign a non-compete clause, something that says, again, if they leave the company on their own volition, that they can't leave and go directly work for a competitor.
For X amount of months or days or whatever.
Correct. 90 days, 60 days, and I forget what it was. I think it was 90 days.
So chat me up. Do you remember there being a wrestler in particular where the non-compete thing would have been a real catalyst for a conversation? Obviously, we've covered Rick Rude and him not being on paper while he was appearing on TV. We did that in our Rick Rude episode. Was there anybody else, though, that you could think?
Not as Luger, far as maybe? A wrestler that I remember off the top of my head, because for the most part, Rude was a special deal. Rude was somebody they wanted, and we were doing daily deals with Rick Rude every day that he appeared. He signed a contract. As for on the wrestling side at this time, obviously Jeff Jarrett's contract was coming up, and he had not been re-signed, but the non-compete on that side was fairly well covered, and it was now an issue of you don't think about your CFO or your head of marketing leaving you and going to work for the competitor, going to work for Ted Turner at the time. That wasn't something we were really thinking about. And Vince got caught with his pants down with Russo and Ed Ferrara just getting up in the middle of the night and leaving. So he wanted to protect that and came in, and especially those of us that were on the wrestling side of things, he had a non-compete drawn up and asked us to sign him.
Do you remember anybody having any hesitation or pushback about doing such?
Yeah, Terry Taylor. Terry Taylor didn't want to sign it. Terry Taylor refused to sign it, and it was interesting because to the man, everyone else in the company were eager to sign it when they were put in front of them. I know we had lawyers look at them, but for the most part, signed it when it was put in front. I signed it when it was put in front of me. I believe Jim Ross signed it when it was put in front of him. Howard Finkel signed it when it was put in front of him. Terry didn't. Terry didn't want to sign it, and argued that, well, if something happens to me here, I want to be able to go back to Atlanta and go back to work for WCW. And Vince felt, well, why are you even thinking about that right now? If you're here and you're with us, then why would you even thinking about going back to work for Atlanta? Terry wanted to be the man. He wanted to be the head writer. He wanted to be the head booker. He wanted to be the second in command of Vince McMahon. And he said that if Vince made him the second in command, then he would sign the non-compete. And Vince wasn't willing to do that.
Are you in the room when he asked for that?
No.
And Vince just tells you after the fact he wanted to be second command?
Terry told me that.
So we've talked a lot about Terry.
And Vince, well, to answer your question, yes, Vince did tell me that, and Terry told me that.
Who, in your opinion, or I guess, who did Vince believe to be in second command at that point?
At that point, it was Jim Ross.
So Terry Taylor wanted the JR spot.
Terry Taylor wanted the JR. Terry Taylor, in his mind, he wanted what he considered the Vince Russo spot. He wanted to be the head TV writer and book the towns as well. JR was booking the towns. Russo was writing the television with Vince, and JR was in charge of talent relations. Terry wanted all of that. That's my recollection.
Does he ask for a raise, or does he just want the title?
I'm sure Terry asked for a raise. I don't know specifically, but I would also believe that Terry probably would have been happy with just the title.
Yeah. So chat me up. How does this conversation go down? You said that Terry told you this, and we haven't talked about Terry much here on the show, but what we have talked about was that you guys didn't always have the best relationship. What was your relationship like at this point with Terry Taylor?
It was a business relationship. Terry was there helping out with creative, and I was there on the talent relations side doing the developmental talent, and again, also trying to help out in creative where I could. Terry, we had a relationship. It just was what it was. It was all business. And Terry felt that he was the only one that could step into that position, and that's what he wanted. And for him to stay, he wanted to be the man. He wanted to be the person in charge. So Vince McMahon at the time was in no hurry to bring anyone in and put anyone in charge. He felt that he had given an awful lot of leeway to Vince Russo, and he felt that he had relied an awful lot on Vince Russo at the time. And for Russo to leave the way that he did, it hurt him. And he wanted to build, maybe build a wall and build a protection so that couldn't happen again. Brian Gewirtz tells the story of, when Vince Russo left, that was the turning point in Vince McMahon's head, that he would never let that happen again, that he would create a team, and he would never have just one or two key people in that role, that he always wanted to have a team. So if one person left,
no big deal.
The rest of the team just carries on.
That makes a lot of sense. And I know a lot of times people want to debate and argue that a team isn't necessary and it was better way back when, blah, blah, blah. But the logic you just laid out makes a lot of sense. Let's talk about something you said a minute ago that I want to circle back to. You said, talking about Vince McMahon and not really wanting to bring anybody in because of the whole Russo thing. You talked about Russo's departure and you said it hurt him. I can't help but feel like you mean personally, like emotionally. It just hurt his feelings.
It did. That is what I meant.
That's not something we talk about a lot here on the show, because this is a guy we always position as being mad at his own sneezes. So when we're talking about someone having their feelings hurt, that's not normally the way we characterize a conversation with Vince McMahon. Did you have a specific conversation about this Russo jump hurting Vince's feelings?
I did. And, Vince is a proud guy. But at the same time, he will admit when his feelings were hurt or, something kind of got to him. And this did. He felt that he had given Russo an awful lot and entrusted Vince Russo, and for Russo to leave the way that he did, it did hurt Vince's feelings. Vince, regardless of how he really is, he sees himself as a very understanding, open, and approachable and caring guy. And I used to say to Vince, you're intimidating. People are intimidated to come talk. God damn it, I'm not intimidating. See what I mean? So I can see Russo's side on not wanting to go and have that discussion with Vince once he made the decision. But I also can see Vince McMahon's side, and I have gone to Vince with some of those topics from time to time, and he's bitten my head off. He's apologized after the fact, but at least I went and talked to him. I know people do, and that is what Vince McMahon was hurt about, that Russo didn't come and speak to him face to face. just hurt his feelings that he left. It was like a breakup.
Let's talk about the transition, because when Vince kind of has this moment of clarity and he says, this will never happen again, and he strengthens his resolve to make sure that he's never totally dependent on one person ever again. Do you remember there being a conversation where we're going to start looking outside for writers? Because the person who steps into the Vince Russo spot is Tommy Blancha, and he was not from wrestling, correct?
Correct. And that process had already started, because Vince McMahon had told Russo, I want more help. I want you to have more help. I want some different writers in. I want people from outside of the wrestling business that have a working knowledge of the wrestling business, but I want somebody from the entertainment industry. Tommy Blancha, I believe, was hired by Vince Russo. So he was going to be brought on and be made a part of the writing team. And then when Blancha started, that was Russo and Ferrara's last week. So I don't think Russo ever worked with Blancha.